Save that trip to the coffee shop and some pennies in your pocket and make the perfect cold brew at home. Hi, I'm Becca of Fork in the Kitchen, and I absolutely love coffee. I am here to walk you through step-by-step how to make the perfect cold brew at home. The good news is you don't need any special equipment, so you can use a French press if you have one. I like to use a large mason jar, or you can use a large measuring cup as well. Essentially, you just need a vessel large enough to hold the water, the coffee grounds, with a little room for expansion. The most important part of making cold brew at home is making sure you have freshly ground coffee beans. You can do this with a grinder that you have at home on the coarsest setting, which is usually called the French press setting. You could also go to a local coffee shop and they will grind your beans for you. Or in your grocery store, there are often coffee grinders next to the whole bean coffee section, so use one of those options. Don't use store-bought ground coffee because it is ground too fine and your cold brew coffee will be over-extracted, which means it will be bitter, and we don't want that. We're gonna take our wide mouth mason jar. Like I said, you can use any vessel you'd like. The mason jar is a touch shy on space. Once the coffee grounds absorb the water, it does expand a little bit over it. So that just makes a stronger cold brew concentrate. If you prefer a less strong concentrate, go ahead and use a larger bowl, or like I said, a measuring cup. So we're gonna pour the grounds into the mason jar and try not to make a mess, but we're gonna make a mess a little bit. Okay, once they're in, then all that's left to do is to add our water. I like to move it around a little bit to make sure that the grounds are getting fully saturated, but you will want to use a spoon, or I have a butter knife here, to make sure that they are all wet before we let it sit overnight. So just gently stir it around. The grounds will expand a little bit as they absorb the water, so leave just a little bit of space. I don't put the lid on super tight because of that, so if any does leak out, I will just set it on a plate or in a bowl just in case. Leave it on the countertop, or you can put it in the fridge for 14 to 24 hours. I find the sweet spot is 18 hours, but you'll figure out your preferences the more you make it. Here we have the cold brew coffee that we just made that needs to sit overnight. And this jar has been sitting and brewing for about 18 hours already. And if you look closely, you can see the color difference. How this one has been extracted, the coffee is ready, and this clearly has a lot of work to do overnight. So we're going to take our cold brew jar that's been working its magic, and we're going to strain it out. Now there are many different ways that you can go about straining out the coffee grounds from the cold brew coffee. What I'm going to use today is a large measuring cup, a fine mesh strainer, and some cheesecloth. The cheesecloth just helps to get out any finer particles, coffee grounds that might be in there. The coffee grounds can get kind of stuck, so just be careful when you pour it out that they don't go everywhere. All right, I'll let it sit and make sure you get every last drop. Now, like I mentioned, making it in a mason jar does make it a little extra concentrated, so you might want to dilute it depending on your preferences. I recommend serving it in a glass with ice, which will naturally dilute it a little bit. If it's still too strong and you like your coffee black, add a little bit of water. I like my cold brew with a little coffee creamer, and today I'm using my homemade vanilla coffee creamer. I will link it below for you. Look at that. So beautiful. Cheers. This is how my brain works. This is just like, oh shit. I like a robot. Coarsely ground coffee, and now it's